it would be defeated. But independence was just the beginning. The real work, building a united, prosperous, and free nation, had only just begun. Today, the Castle of Elmina and Cape Coast still stand, silent witnesses to centuries of pain and power. Tourists walk through the dungeons where thousands once awaited an unthinkable fate. Ghana has preserved these sites not to glorify them, but to remember. In Accra, colonial buildings still serve as public buildings. Schools like Mbasunu and Achimota continue to shape young minds. Roads and railways built for export now connect a thriving nation. These legacies are complicated, part burden, part backbone. What remains clear is that Ghana's modern identity is built on foundation both African and colonial, painful, proud, and profoundly instructive. The story of Ghana is not just about who ruled it, but how it refused to be ruled. It is a story of European greed and African genius, of castle and courage, of chains and freedom. From the arrival of the Portuguese traders to the exit of British colonizers, Ghana was shaped by centuries of contest, but in the end, it was the Ghanaian spirit that triumphed. This land is no longer a prize for empires. It is a nation of its own making, proud, independent, and unshakably free. If you found this story powerful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us what part of Ghana's journey moved you most. Until next time, stay curious, stay proud.
Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever.
Before it became Ghana, the beacon of African independence, this land was known by another name, the Gold Coast, not just for its mineral riches, but for the fierce contest it ignited among Europe's mightiest empires. Portugal, the Netherlands, Britain, Denmark, they all came, they all fought, and for centuries, they all left their mark on this sacred soil. This is not just a story about castle and colonizer, it's a story of ambition, betrayal, resistance, and resilience. It's a story of how Ghana, piece by piece, passed from one European hand to another until finally it reclaimed its own. In this video, we will journey back through time from the first Portuguese sails on the horizon to the final speech of independence. We will uncover the battle for supremacy, the alliances with mighty African kingdoms, the scars left by the slave trade, and the unstoppable rise of a people determined to be free. The year was 1471. The warm waters of the Gulf of Guinea shimmered as strange wooden ships appeared on the horizon. The people of Shama and Elmina watched cautiously as the Portuguese came ashore, armed not with swords, but with shiny goods and silver tongues. They came for gold and they found plenty, but they also came with crosses, claiming souls in the name of Christ. It was the beginning of a long and complicated relationship. In 1482, the Portuguese built Elmina Castle, Africa's first major European fortress. At first, it was a symbol of trade. Soon, it would become a fortress of tragedy. From this castle, the Portuguese exported more than gold. human beings were chained, marched through the infamous Door of No Return, and sent into darkness across the Atlantic. The land that had welcomed visitors became a gateway to human suffering. But while the Portuguese were building castles, other European powers were watching and waiting. By the late 1500s, the scent of gold and power had reached other corners of Europe. The Dutch were first to challenge the Portuguese grip. In 1598, they arrived with muskets and ambition. By 1637, they had seized Elmina Castle. It was no longer Portuguese territory, it was Dutch. And soon, the coast turned into a chessboard. The Danes claimed Fort Christiansborg, the Swedes built Fort Karlsborg, the Brandenburg Parisians, yes, even they had a foothold here. At one point, more than 40 forts lined the Gold Coast, each flying a different flag, each vying for dominance. But it wasn't just Europeans shaping this battle. Powerful African kingdoms like the Fanti and Ashanti played the game too, forming alliances and rivalries, choosing partners in trade and war. It was diplomacy and deception, profit and politics, all unfolding on this small but strategic strip of land. The Gold Coast became Europe's marketplace of empires, and though they came with treaties, they stayed with cannons. As the 1600s turned into the 1700s, gold slowly became a secondary prize. The new currency was human lives. The Gold Coast, once known for its precious minerals, became the bloodline of the transatlantic slave trade. Men, women, and children were captured in inland raids or sold through regional wars. European merchants struck deals with African middlemen and powerful kingdoms, especially the Ashanti, who had risen to dominance through military might and political sophistication. The Ashanti Empire became a force to reckon with. At their height, they controlled vast territories and traded heavily with the British and Dutch, exchanging captives for guns, clothes, and alcohol. In return, their influence spread far beyond the forests of Kumasi. But it was a double-edged sword. While kingdoms grew rich and powerful, communities were torn apart, families vanished, cultures were uprooted, a dark economy thrived, and the coasts, many European forts, became prisons for the condemned. This era forged bitter truths. Not all colonial domination came at the barren of gun. Sometimes it came with a handshake, a contract, and a cargo ship. By the 1800s, the European scramble narrowed to one dominant player, Britain. The Danes sold their forts. The Dutch, after nearly 2 centuries of power, quietly left in 1872, handing over Elmina Castle to the British. Now, red flags flew where once they had been orange or blue. But the Ashanti were not ready to kneel. They resisted British interference, clashed over territory and trade, and defended their sovereignty with pride. 4 bloody wars would follow, the Anglo-Ashanti Wars, stretching from 1824 to 1900. The final blow came when the British troops marched on Kumasi in 1896. They looted the city, burnt it, and exiled the Ashanti king, Prempeh I, to the Seychelles. The golden stool, sacred to the Ashanti, became the focus of one last defiant stand in 1900, led by the brave Queen Mother, Yaa Ashanti, though she was captured. Her name would echo through history. In 1901, Britain officially declared the entire territory a crown colony, the Gold Coast. The battle for dominance was over for now. Empire had won. Once in control, the British began to build, not for the people, but for the empire's profits. Railways were laid, not to connect communities, but to transport cocoa and gold to the ports. Roads sliced through forests, heading straight to the coast. Abos buzzed with the business of empire. Accra grew into the colonial capital, a city of laws, ledgers, and letters, but divided sharply between colonial officials and the African working class. Schools like Achimota were established to create a new elite, Africans educated in the British way, yet often kept from positions of real power. Hospitals, post offices, administrative buildings, many of the structures you see today were built during this time, but they served the needs of a few, not the many. Beneath the surface of colonial order lay discontent, exclusion, and the steady rumbling of a coming storm. Because even as Britain built its legacy in stone and steel, a different kind of construction was underway, the building of resistance. The 20th century began with the Gold Coast firmly under British control, but beneath the surface, winds of change were stirring. A new generation of Africans, educated in colonial schools, began to question the very system that raised them. In 1897, the Aborigines Rights Protection Society was formed, the first organized resistance to British land laws. It was a whisper of rebellion. By the 1940s, that whisper had grown into a roar. World War II changed everything. Thousands of African soldiers fought alongside the British, only to return home to inequality and insult. Why should they die for freedom in Europe while living under oppression in Africa? In 1947, the United Gold Coast Convention was formed. Their mission, self-governance, but it was the arrival of a young, charismatic leader, Kwame Nkrumah, that would elect